The doors swung open and 300 of the city's most dangerous people went completely silent. She was supposed to be the joke. The maid. The punchline of a cruel woman's evening entertainment. Instead, Seo Ji-yeon watched her entire world shift in the time it took one woman to cross a marble floor in a gold dress worth $1 million. She invited Amara to humiliate her. She never considered what Amara had spent 4 months quietly building, inside her own home. Hey family, welcome to my story channel. Please subscribe and give this video a like, it truly means the world to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thank you so much for the support. Now sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. The doors burst open. Not slowly, not gently. They swung wide like the room had been waiting. Like the whole night had been holding its breath for this exact moment. 300 people. Crystal glasses. A jazz band mid-note. Laughter bouncing off marble walls. And then silence. Not the polite kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that falls when something enters a room that doesn't fit any category you've ever seen before. She stood in the doorway. The dress was gold, but not the fake gold that screams cheap. It was deep, liquid gold, the kind that moved like water when she breathed. It draped off one shoulder and swept the floor behind her in a slow, deliberate trail. Diamonds sat at her collarbone like they'd grown there. Her heels were custom. Everyone in the room could see that. Her posture was perfect. Not rehearsed. Natural. Like she'd been standing in rooms like this her whole life. And maybe she had. The jazz band stopped playing. The violinist forgot to draw his bow. Someone's champagne glass tilted and spilled, and nobody looked down. Every single pair of eyes in that room locked onto her. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply stepped forward, one slow, measured step, and let the room absorb her. In the back corner, near the bar, a woman in red gripped her wine glass so hard her knuckles went white. That woman was Seo Ji-yeon, wife of the most feared man in the city. A woman who had never, not once in her life, lost control of a room. She was losing it now. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed. Her mind raced back 3 hours. Back to the moment she'd made what she thought was a hilarious decision. Back to the gold-trimmed invitation card she'd personally slid across a kitchen counter with a smirk on her lips. "Come tonight," she had said. "Let's see how you clean up." She'd meant it as a joke. The entire kitchen staff had heard her say it. They'd laughed, because they were supposed to. Because when Seo Ji-yeon made a joke, you laughed. The woman she'd handed that invitation to? She hadn't laughed. She just looked at Ji-yeon with those calm, dark eyes and said, "Thank you. I'll be there." And now here she was. Here was Amara, the woman who had spent the last 4 months mopping Ji-yeon's floors, pressing Ji-yeon's tablecloths, and serving Ji-yeon's guests standing in the entrance of Ji-yeon's own party, looking like she owned the building. A guest near the door leaned toward his wife and whispered, "Who is that?" His wife shook her head slowly. "I have no idea. But that dress, that's not something you just buy." Ji-yeon took one step forward, then stopped. Because across the room, their eyes met. And Amara, calm, still, composed, gave the smallest nod. Not a bow. Not a greeting. A warning. 3 hours earlier, she was just the maid they laughed at. Now the whole room was looking at her, and not one person was laughing. Seo Ji-yeon didn't wake up powerful. She'd married into it. But after 15 years as the wife of Don Jang Tae-soo, she had learned to wear power the way other women wore perfume. Constantly, and in every room she entered. She was 41 years old. Slim. Immaculately dressed. Her dark hair was always swept up. Her nails were always done. She never raised her voice. She never had to. The people around her had learned long ago that quiet from Ji-yeon was worse than screaming. She ran the household with a precision that bordered on obsessive. Staff were hired through an agency, vetted, and kept on a very short leash. Rules were posted in the staff kitchen. No personal phone calls in the main house. No eye contact with guests. No speaking unless spoken to. Amara had joined the staff 4 months ago. She was referred by the agency with a clean record and 2 references. The housekeeper, Maria, had interviewed her herself. "You've worked in private homes before?" Maria had asked. "Yes," Amara said. "You understand discretion?" "Completely." She'd started the next Monday. Uniform pressed. Hair pinned. Eyes low. She worked without complaint, without conversation, without error. She was, by every measure, the perfect maid. Which was exactly why Ji-yeon didn't trust her. It wasn't something she could explain. It was instinct. The way Amara moved through the house, too quietly, too carefully. The way she would pause near certain rooms. The way she sometimes tilted her head when guests spoke, as if she was filing things away rather than ignoring them. But she never did anything wrong. So Ji-yeon kept her. And Ji-yeon kept watching. The humiliation started small the way it always does. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Amara started. A group of Ji-yeon's friends had gathered for lunch in the main dining room. Women with too much money and too little purpose. Amara was serving. As she placed a platter on the table, one of the women laughed and said, "Oh Ji-yeon, where did you find this one? She's so serious." Ji-yeon smiled lazily. "She barely speaks. I've started to think she doesn't actually understand English." The women laughed. Amara said nothing. She straightened the platter, stepped back, and waited. "Darling, can you understand us?" Ji-yeon asked, looking directly at her. Amara met her eyes briefly. "Perfectly, ma'am." Silence. Then Ji-yeon laughed louder than the rest. "Oh, she does speak. How delightful." Amara's expression did not change. Not a flicker. Not a flinch. That was the moment Ji-yeon decided she didn't like her. And Ji-yeon, when she didn't like someone, always found a way to make them feel it. The comments became regular. The tasks became more demeaning. Reprimands in front of other staff. Being assigned extra cleaning after already working a long shift. Small, deliberate cruelties designed to erode. Amara took every single one of them without reaction. "She's either incredibly disciplined or incredibly stupid," Ji-yeon said to Maria one evening. Maria said nothing. "You think she's disciplined?" Ji-yeon pressed. Maria looked toward the hallway where Amara had just disappeared. "I think she's patient," Maria said carefully. Ji-yeon scoffed. "Same thing." It wasn't. It happened on a Friday morning. The annual Jang Gala was 2 days away. Every year, the event was Ji-yeon's signature moment. 300 guests, a live orchestra, catered food from a chef flown in from Milan. It was the one night a year where Ji-yeon was not just a wife but a queen, and she played the role without mercy. That morning, the staff was in full preparation mode. Flowers were being arranged. Tables were being polished. Ji-yeon was walking through the house with her clipboard, barking corrections. "The centerpieces are too tall, people can't see each other across the table. Redo them. The candles go on the east wall, not the north." Did no one look at the layout? She turned a corner and almost walked into Amara, who was carrying a stack of pressed linens. "Watch where your..." Ji-yeon stopped. Looked at her. Something sharp crossed her eyes. Then she smiled. It was not a kind smile. She reached into the pocket of her blazer and pulled out one of the cream, gold-trimmed invitation cards she'd been handing to guests all week. She held it out to Amara. "Come on Saturday," she said loudly, making sure the other staff nearby could hear. "Come to the party." Amara looked at the card. Then at Ji-yeon. "As a guest, ma'am?" "Of course. As a guest." Ji-yeon's smile widened. "Think of it as a reward for all your hard work." She paused, then added softly, "Make sure you don't embarrass me tonight." She dropped the card on top of the linens and walked away. The kitchen erupted the second she was gone. "Don't go," whispered Jorge, the groundskeeper. "It's a trap. She wants to humiliate you in front of everyone. She's going to make you serve drinks in your own uniform and pretend it was your idea," said Rosa, the cook, stirring her pot without looking up. "I've seen her do it before." Amara stood still, looking at the invitation in her hands. "She'll embarrass you, Amara," Maria said quietly. In front of 300 people. That's what this is. Amara set the linens down neatly on the counter. She picked up the invitation and slid it into her own pocket. "Thank you all," she said calmly. "I'll be there." She walked out. That afternoon, she left the mansion at 4 p.m. Her shift had ended. She walked to the street, and the moment she turned the corner, something changed. Her phone rang. She answered it on the second ring. "It's Saturday," she said into the phone. "It's happening Saturday." A pause. Then, "Are you ready?" She glanced back at the mansion briefly. "I've been ready for 4 months." She stepped into a black car that had been idling at the curb. As she got in, the doorman of the building across the street caught sight of her. He straightened immediately. "Good evening, Ms. Osei," he said, tipping his head. She gave him a brief nod. The car pulled away. Saturday arrived dressed in its finest. By 7 p.m., the Jang mansion was unrecognizable from the place where staff scrubbed floors every morning. Every surface gleamed. The chandelier cast 10,000 points of light across the ceiling. A string quartet played near the fountain in the courtyard, and white-jacketed servers moved through the crowd with trays of champagne like they'd rehearsed this 100 times because they had. The guests arrived in waves. City council members, corporate names, judges, business owners, and woven quietly through all of them the silent associates of Don Jang Tae-soo, men who never appeared in newspapers but made decisions that moved the entire city. Don Tae-soo himself stood near the bar, tall and unhurried, shaking hands with the particular warmth of a man who knew exactly how feared he was. His sleeves were rolled to the elbow just enough to reveal the edge of the dark ink that climbed his forearms, traditional Korean patterns that his associates knew better than to ask about. He didn't need to perform authority. He simply had it. Ji-yeon worked the room with practiced grace. A hand on an arm here. A laugh there. A perfectly timed compliment. She moved like she was conducting a symphony. And then she'd find a guest someone she particularly liked and pull them aside with a delighted whisper. "Can I tell you something absolutely hilarious?" She'd told 6 people by 8 p.m. "My maid is coming tonight. As a guest. Can you imagine?" The reactions were exactly what she wanted. "Your maid? Coming here? To this? Oh, Ji-yeon, you're terrible. What is she going to wear?" Ji-yeon laughed each time. "That's precisely what I'm curious about." The mood around her little circle was sharp and entertained. The kind of people in this room understood hierarchies the way animals understand pecking orders instinctively, completely. The idea of a maid walking into this space was comedy to them. Something absurd. Something that broke the natural order. "When she gets here," said one guest, a heavy-set man named Senator Brandt, swirling his whiskey, "are you actually going to let her stay? Or is this the part where you hand her a serving tray?" Ji-yeon smiled her slow, sharp smile. "Let's see how she presents herself first. And if she presents herself well?" "No one presents themselves well in a uniform, Senator." They laughed. Across the room, Don Tae-soo watched his wife work. He'd heard the story about the maid. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't commented. He'd simply watched, the way he always watched, quietly, carefully, storing information. He had not stayed alive this long by dismissing details. Something about this felt off. He couldn't say what. By 9 p.m., the party was at full roar. The string quartet had shifted to jazz. The crowd had loosened. Voices were louder. The stories were bolder. The city's most dangerous and most powerful people were all in one room, all relaxed, all talking freely. It was exactly the wrong moment for a surprise. And the door was about to open. She arrived at 9:15 p.m. The door opened, and Amara walked in wearing her uniform. The same gray and white she wore every single workday. Her hair was pinned the same way. Her shoes were the same flat, practical shoes. She looked like she had just come off shift. She stood just inside the entrance, taking in the room. The whispers started immediately. A woman near the door elbowed her husband. "Is that the maid?" Her husband squinted. "It must be." Ji-yeon materialized out of the crowd with the speed of someone who had been watching the door all night. She appeared at Amara's side in seconds, champagne glass in hand, smile at full power. "You came," she said brightly, loud enough for the nearest 20 people to hear clearly. "I'm so glad. I was afraid you might not make it." Amara looked at her. "I said I would." "Yes, you did." Ji-yeon tilted her head. "I have to say, I admire the choice of outfit." She let her eyes sweep the uniform slowly. "Very authentic." Laughter. Not from everyone, but enough. A cluster of Jae-yeon's friends who had gathered nearby let out the kind of quiet, controlled laughter that is somehow worse than the loud kind. Amara did not look at them. "I'm glad you like it," she said. Ji-yeon's smile tightened at the edges. She had expected embarrassment. She had expected Amara to shrink, to stammer, to look at her feet. She had not expected this, the same calm, the same still eyes. "I was thinking," Ji-yeon said, louder now, working the crowd, "since you're so comfortable in your role, perhaps you could help out tonight. Just a little." She lifted a tray from a passing server and held it out to Amara. "The guests could use more champagne." The cluster of friends laughed openly now. Senator Brandt, nearby, raised his glass with a smirk. "I'll take one." Amara looked at the tray, then at Ji-yeon, then slowly around the room. Ji-yeon was waiting. The crowd was waiting. Everyone was watching. Amara took the tray. She served 3 glasses, Senator Brandt, then 2 others, with quiet, practiced efficiency. Not rushed. Not humiliated. Just calm. And then she set the tray down on a nearby table, smoothed the front of her uniform, and said quietly to Ji-yeon, "Excuse me for a moment." She turned and walked toward the back of the hall. Not quickly. Not emotionally. Just walked. Ji-yeon watched her go. She turned to her friends with a triumphant expression. "See? Same woman. Different building." She lifted her glass. "To knowing your place." They drank. Nobody noticed the back door close behind Amara with a soft, clean click. 4 minutes passed. The music played. The conversations resumed. Ji-yeon had already moved on, already found another circle to dazzle. She had gotten what she wanted. The night was hers. Then the doors opened again. It wasn't dramatic. There was no announcement. The hinges didn't creak. The doors simply swung wide, and the woman standing in them made the music stop making sense. The string quartet didn't quit, but 2 people stopped listening. Then 5. Then 30. Then everyone. Amara Osei stood in the doorway in a gown that did not belong in a category. It was gold, the kind of gold that required a master jeweler and 3 months of work. It moved when she moved, like it was alive. One shoulder bare. A train that swept the marble floor in a slow, elegant arc. At her collarbone, a diamond piece that caught every light in the chandelier above and split it into 100 directions. Her hair was down loose, full, commanding. Her chin was up. Her hands were relaxed at her sides. She took 1 step forward. And the room, 300 people, the most powerful people in the city, watched her do it. Senator Brandt set his whiskey down. The woman who had laughed loudest touched her own collarbone and said nothing. Don Jang Tae-soo, who had not reacted to anything all evening, went very still. A woman near the front murmured to the man beside her, "That dress, that's not something you can just buy." "No," he said slowly. "You can't." A man in a charcoal suit near the side wall straightened. His name was Edouard Marchetti, head of the city's oldest banking family, a man whose handshake had launched governments. He had been to every party in this city for 40 years. He walked forward through the crowd until he reached her. "Ms. Osei," he said quietly. She turned to him. "I didn't expect to see you here." His voice was careful. Weighted. The voice of a man choosing words very deliberately. "I was invited," she said simply. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and said, "Of course." And he stayed beside her. Across the room, Ji-yeon had frozen. The champagne glass in her hand had not moved in 30 seconds. Her friends had stopped talking. The whole architecture of the evening had just shifted, and not in any direction she'd planned for. She stared at the woman in the gold dress. The maid she had handed a serving tray less than 10 minutes ago. Her mind refused to process it. The uniform was gone. The flat shoes were gone. The pinned hair was gone. And in their place stood someone who looked like she belonged here more than anyone else in the room. Who is she? The question hit her like a cold wave. Who is she? Edouard Marchetti did not let go of her side. That alone was the signal. In this room, in this world, where you stood and who stood next to you told the whole story. And Marchetti, old money, untouchable Marchetti, was standing next to Amara like she was the most important person in the building. People noticed. People always noticed. Conversations began changing shape. Guests who had laughed 20 minutes ago were now repositioning. Glasses were lowered. Eyes were calculating. Who is she? Became the whispered currency of the room. The answer moved through the crowd in pieces. A woman near the windows said it first. That's Amara Osei. The name sounds familiar. It should. Her father built half the infrastructure contracts in this country before he died. She runs the Osei group now. Privately. Very quietly. Silence. She's been running it for 6 years. She's worth. She's the one they've been calling the silent fund. The investor. That's her. That's her. More silence. Don Jang Tae-soo, who had been watching all of this from across the room, walked slowly toward Marchetti. The two men exchanged a look, the particular look of two people who understand exactly what is happening without saying it. Tae-soo, Marchetti said. You know Ms. Osei, I assume. Don Tae-soo looked at her. His expression was unreadable. We've met, Amara said. In a professional context. A small pause. He just didn't know it was me. Something shifted in Tae-soo's eyes. Not anger. Understanding. The acquisition review, he said slowly. 3 months ago. The silent partner. I was reviewing your holdings, she said. For the Financial Crimes Division. The words were quiet. Almost gentle. But they fell in the room like a stone in still water, ripples moving in every direction, touching everything. Financial Crimes Division. She hadn't been a maid. She had never been a maid. She had been inside this house, this fortress of a house, for 4 months. She had pressed the linens. She had served the lunches. She had moved through every room, heard every conversation, observed every guest who passed through those doors. She had seen everything. And she had reported everything. Senator Brandt put his glass down on the nearest surface and began looking for the exit. 2 of Tae-soo's associates were already on their phones. Marchetti, for his part, looked almost amused. The agency that sent her, he said quietly to Tae-soo. I'd start asking questions about who owns it. Tae-soo said nothing. He looked at his wife. Ji-yeon was across the room, 15 feet away, and she hadn't moved. She was standing exactly where she'd been standing when the doors opened the second time, perfectly still, perfectly silent, the champagne glass finally lowered, her face doing something it almost never did. It was crumbling. Ji-yeon crossed the room. She had to. To stay still was to surrender, and Seo Ji-yeon did not surrender. She moved through the parting crowd with her chin high, her posture intact, her smile still fighting to exist on her face. She stopped 2 feet from Amara. The room went quiet the way it had when the doors first opened. So, Ji-yeon said softly. This was all a performance. Not all of it, Amara said. The floors needed cleaning. I cleaned them. You were spying in my house. I was doing my job in your house. Your job. Ji-yeon's voice had the edge of something breaking. You cleaned my bathrooms. And I learned more in those bathrooms than most investigators learn in a year. Ji-yeon's jaw tightened. She stepped closer, dropping her voice. I invited you tonight to humiliate you. I handed you a tray in front of my guests. You did, Amara said. And then for the first time all evening she almost smiled. Not triumphant. Not cruel. Just steady. And in doing so, you introduced me to your entire network. Every associate, every contact, every person whose name I needed, all in one room. All in one night. She let that sit. Then, you invited me to be a joke. But you just introduced me to your audience. Ji-yeon said nothing. There was nothing to say. The crowd that had laughed at a woman in a uniform was now watching that same woman dismantle one of the most powerful households in the city, not with anger, not with revenge, but with the quiet, devastating efficiency of someone who had planned every moment of this from the beginning. Ji-yeon looked around the room. Senator Brandt was gone. 2 of her husband's men were gone. Her friends had retreated to the walls. Her husband, the most feared man in the city, was standing with his hands in his pockets, looking at the floor. She looked back at Amara. And for the first time in 15 years, Seo Ji-yeon had nothing. What happens now? She said. And it came out smaller than she intended. Now, Amara said quietly, the right people ask the right questions. And the truth does what truth always does. She looked at Ji-yeon one last time, not with hatred, not with victory, but with something almost like pity. You should have been kinder to the people who worked for you, she said. Not because I was one of them, but because cruelty always costs more than it earns. She turned. And she walked unhurried, unbothered, the gold dress moving behind her in a long, slow sweep across the marble floor. The crowd parted before her. Not because they feared her. Because they respected her. And some of them, the wiser ones, had respected her from the moment she first walked through that door 4 months ago in her grey uniform and flat shoes, moving through the rooms of a powerful house with calm, dark eyes that missed nothing. Amara Osei stepped out into the cool night air. Behind her, the lights of the Jang mansion blazed. Inside, 300 people had stopped pretending nothing had happened and had started the long, uncomfortable process of figuring out what it meant that they'd all been in the same room as a woman like that and hadn't known it. She got into the black car at the curb. The door closed. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word. Through the tinted window, the mansion shrank behind her, all its grandeur suddenly looking very fragile, very small. She looked straight ahead. Some people wear power. Others carry it. She had never once put it down. We've come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.